Good afternoon, Las Vegas. This is Clark coming to you live here in America. If we're still America, sometimes I question what we are or what we're becoming. But, anyways, we're here today live with you from this glorious city of Las Vegas, where millions of people come a year, some 40 million people, to partake of our one of the wonders of the world is certainly Las Vegas, because we have more compact in action, I guess, than any place else in the planet. I mean, where else can you walk a couple blocks and see what you can see going on that you do in Las Vegas? And where can you go where money changes hands on such a feverish pace? Even Wall Street, I don't think, even compares to what the action on a over-the-table basis type stuff going on. Wall Street is more or less done with paperwork and records and transferring of stock and whatever. And it doesn't have the instant reward and loss of where you make a bet and within seconds you know whether you've won or lost it. I think that's why in this town, other venues for gambling like horse racing, dog racing, even highlight that they tried at the original MGM, if you remember. You could bet on the players who would win or lose. But, that really didn't take on that much. Now, down in Florida, it's very popular. You can go to those highlight frontons down there and you can make a wager. You can bet on dog tracks down there and horse tracks. But they don't have casino gambling. I think when you have casino gambling at a venue, that's going to take precedent over any other way to lose your money or make money, because there's nothing so quick. A horse race, how long does it take between races? What is it, 15 minutes maybe? It takes all day to go to the track and see all the races. In Vegas, you can walk up to a crap table and you can literally lose 50 fortunes within minutes if you're so inclined, or make it, I guess, if you happen to walk up at the right table at the right time. But this is exciting stuff. That's what makes Las Vegas, is the instantaneous devastation or success, whichever way you look at it, whatever happens. So I think that's been the mainstay of what created Las Vegas to start with, and now Vegas has become other things besides just a gambling destination. Like I started out, as a sight to behold. There's no view like the Las Vegas Strip with these magnificent hotels and with the quantity of rooms they have. I think out of the 10 largest hotels in the world, we might have the 10 right here. I think there's a couple of hotels that used to be, the hotels are still there, but they used to be considered the largest hotels in the world years ago. But I think Vegas has far surpassed them with City Center and the MGM and Wynn and the Venetian. These hotels far dwarf any other hotels around the world. How could a hotel in other parts of the world justify 3, 4, 5,000 rooms? How do they do that? How do they make it work? In Vegas, it's gambling. And when we build other capacity, like I guess the original Boyd property where the Stardust was, is supposedly starting to, I think it was approved the other day by the building department or whatever. And it's going to be, I think they're projecting 3,000 rooms right off the bat, with increase to 4 or 5, I guess, after that. But that's a lot of rooms. And what's happened in my experience, having been here some almost 40 years, that when capacity increases in Vegas, the capacity fills up. And then there's more demand, and someone else builds a hotel, and that capacity is absorbed. Because if the truth be known, the amount of people trying to get rooms on a daily basis here in Vegas, trying to make a reservation, especially certain times of the year, they're turned down by the thousands. Like, take New Year's Eve. I don't think there's any limit to how many rooms we could have here. I mean, the more rooms you got, the bigger of a show it becomes. And Vegas is just a real wonder of the world. It really is. But that's on the gambling side of the town. And the gambling has its, that's what created this town. That's why it's here. And that's what makes Vegas Vegas. There's nothing else. I don't think people come here because we have an auto mall in Henderson. I don't think people come here because we have malls that sell clothes. Some people, foreigners, might visit those malls when they come here to stock up on some things that they can't get while they're home. Like I remember years ago, the Mexicans used to pour in here on junkets and stuff from Mexico City and Guadalajara and cities in Mexico. We'd fly in DC-10s, and the women and the men would come, and the men would gamble, and the wives would whip off to the mall, and you'd see them coming through the lobby with these packages and packages and packages from their shopping sprees. And there's a lot of things that go on in Vegas. The shows, I think, are the best in the world ever. Atlantic City, when they do have shows, are usually only on the weekend. You go to Atlantic City in the daytime, in the week rather, and it's dead. The only time that has anything going on is during the weekends. And then there's a lot of bus tours was their mainstay. People driving in from Philadelphia and other surrounding cities, New York, maybe Connecticut. Of course, they built Foxwoods in Connecticut, and that kind of hurt Atlantic City to a certain extent because Foxwoods is, I guess, really big. I've never been there, but I understand it's quite the sight to see there. And we gave everything away to the Indians to make up for all that property we took from them way back when they owned the whole country, I guess. But they sure have come out well on that one. But anyways, most of their casinos are run by operators that are the casino operators that are well known here in town. They just branch out and they go operate these Indian places, or they operate riverboats and these other venues that have popped up. Riverboats are pretty much, I think, over with. That was a trick to get the gambling passed, to get it on the ballot, where people would say, oh, yeah, well, riverboat, let's go for it. And then the riverboat, all of a sudden, it used to have to sail down the river, but that soon went by the wayside. And then the riverboat was tied up at the dock all the time, never left. And then the riverboat became more and more permanent there at the dock and could leave if it wanted to. And then pretty soon they said, screw it, we'll just build a hotel next to the riverboat, and then that'll become the casino. And this is the way things progress. It's all bait and switch. Get it on the ballot, get it passed, and then we'll make it into something else. Like Obamacare, becoming the Affordable Care Act, which is anything but that. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all lies. Everything is presented one way, and it always turns into another. So this whole country is run by a bunch of dishonest people. And this is what we're left with here. As we, the people who this country was founded for, this is what we're left with. We're left with a country that in a lot of respects doesn't work anymore. Vegas has worked for years and years, since I guess the 40s or 50s. Really had the late 60s with Caesar's Palace and the Flamingo having been there prior to that for several years. The Hacienda, the old El Rancho, and we've developed into this thing where the corporations, I guess, are supposedly running the town now. But we've progressed to quite the show. So anyways, that's Vegas. But this country is going through a stretch right now where we've had 7 years of devastation with this administration that's currently in power in Washington, D.C., and something has to be done to straighten this out. We have to get back on track. We have to make this country great again. We were great again, but we have an absolute terrorist in the White House that is trying to destroy this country because he doesn't believe in American greatness. He thinks America has been responsible for all the troubles around the world. And all the troubles around the world, this country is only 250 years old. From our constitutional days, I mean, I think Columbus founded around 1492. So if you go back then, it's by 600, It's not even 600 years old when you go back there. But the East and Asia and all these other countries around the world that everybody points to all these problems and this and that, like Obama, that we're the cause of all this. These countries in the East have been fighting for thousands of years. Thousands of years. These people were desert thieves, is what they were before they found oil underneath their land. The only way they would survive is rob people transgressing through the desert. This is what they were. And they fight. That's their nature. This is the way they were. It's in their nature. It's in their very, very nature. Caliphate and all this stuff. I mean, they're fighters. That's all they can do. They'll never, ever, ever get along. They haven't for thousands of years. How did it become our fault? So everything that these liberals, the progressives, are cramming down your throat are all lies. I don't know of anything that they say that's truthful. Hillary's up there the other day giving a speech about how everybody that she sees and hears and talks to are all nodding in agreement with her, is what she's claiming. They're nodding off is what they're doing. But anyway, she said, oh, every time I say it, people nod and nod. And they think I did a wonderful job as the Secretary of State. And what did you do? It's just, come on. We got to get common sense back in the world here. We have to start looking at what's being told to us by these people, individuals running for election, and we have to look at what the parties are saying, because my opinion is the parties are the problem. The parties are illegal organizations that take the people that you vote into office, they hijack them, and they distort their thoughts, and they buy them from special interest money. They buy these politicians that you elect to send off to do your business. They get hijacked right away. And now they become just operatives to the special interest people that want this or that. That's not necessarily good for the American people. Most of the time bad. But this is what you end up with. This is the system. And we have to do something fundamentally to change the system. Not fundamentally change America. We need to get America back to being great again. And one of the ways we do that is we have to change the way that we elect our leaders. We have to change the mindset of a Harry Reid that you can be in office for 30-something years, or a Byrd who they had to haul off the Senate floor on a stretcher at 90-something years old. I mean, we've got to stop this career politician, because that's not the way the framers of our fine Constitution devised this country, that it was supposed to be very temporary positions where you represented your constituents for a brief period of time. And then you went back home to do whatever you did back home. And someone new came to fill the need as representation. And this is what they envisioned: constant turnover and new blood, new faith, new ideas, new this, new that. That's what keeps this country going. That's how this country was founded, on those types of principles. And we need to get back to that. There's so much crap that goes on in this country now because our leaders are entrenched in their power base, and they won't give it up. They won't give it up. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that will never change. And we need to change it so that people do not get that powerful to where they have absolute power. We have to watch that like a bad cancer. We have to cut it out. And this is what we need to do in this country. We need to go back to following laws. When there's a law on the book, people that we elect, people that are on the bench as judges and so forth, our legislatures, they are charged with passing laws. Unfortunately, have a tendency to pass too many laws and way too many regulations. We have to cut down on the regulations big time, and that's killing our country. It's strangling our businesses. They can't operate because they spend so much time and effort with regulations that they can't even do their business of creating things for the people that they can sell and make money so they can pay their employees. We've strangled our businesses. We've done everything that we can possibly do in this country has been done wrong. And we, as who this country was founded for, we need to take it upon ourselves to make sure that we follow a few basic fundamentals. And one of them is that we can't have people in office forever. We have to have turnover. We have to have term limits, if there is such a thing. The people in power are never going to go for term limits, so we have to create our own term limits with a ballot box. And we throw people out of office that have been in office for a certain amount of time. We have to have turnover, and we just don't elect them anymore. I think from a standpoint of cleaning this country up, and this city and other cities around the country, we need to have a policy, at least for a while, a couple election cycles, that any incumbent that we don't vote back in, any incumbent, whether good, bad, we have to clean the slate. We have to get rid of all the entrenched people that are in power, that have connection here, connection there. We have to cut the ties to all those connections because the connections are corrupt. And we need to get rid of those. And we need to get this country back. We need to get back to where we can produce something. What happened to the Roman Empire was they became a country of consumers rather than a country of producers, and they fell flat on their face because they ran out of money. They couldn't produce anything. They couldn't make any money anymore, so they went broke and collapsed. They were the most powerful empire in the world, and they didn't make it. And we can see signs that this is happening in America. It's happened in Greece. It's happened in Iceland. Europe is going through all kinds of struggles right now. One of the struggles is that they have been taken over for the most part with liberal policies over the years, and those liberal policies come home to roost, and you end up taking all these other people into your country that are out to destroy you and destroy your country. And this is what's happened. Millions of people have migrated into Europe from Muslim countries, from Mideast countries, and they've taken over England, Paris, France, and France itself. And these people are Germany. I guess New Year's Eve, they had all kinds of rapes and so forth going on in Germany, where these groups of guys were just grabbing women and ripping off their clothes and having their way with them, because that's what women are in the Mideast. They're just things for men. They just there for the man's convenience, and that's the way it is. And that's their nature. That's the way they were raised, and you're not going to change it. You cannot change it. What you need to do is you need to segregate people with different philosophies, different ways of life. You need to keep them in their way of life, wherever their way of life is. Why would you want to assimilate them into your culture and completely destroy your culture? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like Donald Trump says, we're going to take a pause on letting these people come into this country till we figure out what the hell's going on. Now, what's wrong with that? It has too much common sense, and the liberals would never go for that, because what the liberals want are devastation. They want these types of problems. If there's no problems going on in the world, liberal progressives will create problems, like what a community organizer does. They create the problem, so then they have an issue that they can say, make a claim to the voters that they're going to fix it. They create the problem, and then they say they're going to fix it. Why don't we just fix you and get you the hell out of the mix so that we don't have so many problems that we have to fix? Do away with the causes of the problems, and you will find out that you've straightened out all the problems. So we need to get back on a common sense footing, and we need to do things that make sense. And this is what needs to be done. I'm going to be pushing for it with every ounce that I have left in me. And hopefully people will start listening. People will get the message. I think the people are responding to Trump in a positive way, and I hope they continue to do so, because if we lose the chance that we have of having a real leader in this country like a Donald Trump, we're I don't know. We're just going to be in terrible, terrible shape. And we can't even consider for a second a non-leader like Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. I mean, these two people are pathetic. That other guy running, nobody even knows who he is, but he's from a liberal background. So that's all I needed to know. His policies are wrong. Everything about him's wrong. So you can't have that. That's for damn sure. We've had that for 7 years, and look where we've gotten. And don't ever forget, people, that the last 2 years of Bush's administration, the House and the Senate were both controlled by the liberals. And that's when we got the Barney Frank and the Chris Dodd devastation in the homing industry and that collapse and the banking collapse, where they were dictating that these banks give out loans 125% to value, and that's not going to work. People have a $100,000 house, they could borrow 125,000, take the 25,000 and piss it away on drugs or whatever, and vacation or whatever frivolities that they couldn't afford to start with. And then when it comes time to pay the piper, they can't pay the piper. So they had the 25,000's already been spent. So what they're left with is a $100,000 house that they can't pay for, and the house goes into foreclosure, and then you end up with broken windows and people moving out and devastation. And like in Detroit, where they have to bring out the bulldozers and bulldoze under all these houses because they're rats infested, breeding grounds for all kinds of disease and everything else. This is the liberal town. Detroit was liberal. That's what happens, folks. This is where this country's going if we don't stop it. And I feel sorry for the young kids coming up. If you're born a few years ago, boy, I don't know what's going to happen to you all. I just don't understand what's going to happen. It's going to be very, very bad. And I only hope that something happens that you all can get this life going in the right direction again. You know, for decades, we used to leave our children better off than what our parents left us. For decade after decade, that was the norm, that everybody improved their life in this country. We had more. We did better. Our income, our gross national product, everything increased. We became more productive. We invented some things. Up through the 50s and 60s, we had massive inventions. And we developed airplanes and stuff that fly all around the world. We had the Concorde. You could fly across the ocean in 5 hours, I guess it was. We have space shuttles going to inner space. We went to the moon and back. I mean, it's absolutely incredible how fast and how quick. I can remember I don't remember personally, but Orville Wright and Wright brothers invented that rubber band propeller job back in the 1903, I think it was, where they got that thing in the air off the Kitty Hawk, South Carolina, and flew for a few feet. And that created a space shuttle that now goes, well, not anymore, but did go into space and back. And we had 747s flying all over the world and massive, massive airplanes from that thing that the Wright brothers invented, which would have been, 113 years ago. 113 years we've progressed to this point. And we did that with a good government, a good system, a productive atmosphere of capitalism where entrepreneurs could develop a better mousetrap, and we could produce something, get rewarded for it, and actually make a success out of this country. That's before we had a so-called leader, community organizer, telling the potential entrepreneurs of this country, you didn't build that. The government built that. The roads, who the hell do you think paid for the roads? The taxpayers paid for the roads. The government pays for nothing without using your money. So the government is not the answer. The government is the problem. We have to limit the size and scope of our government. We have to put them in check. That's why our forefathers came up with this theory of checks and balances with 3 branches of government, that one branch checks the other 2 and vice versa. And if one gets out of whack, the other branches have an obligation to get that back in whack, back in control. And these foundations, principles that were created back in our founding were very basic, long, tried, true principles that we need to get back to. And this country has gone away from it because it's the natural progression of things that things are going to get carried away. The people in power are going to take advantage, and they're going to do things that benefit themselves and not the the populace as a whole. And it's a terrible situation. And we have to recover our world and get our train back on the track. And I think Trump, from the top down, can go a long way to getting that done. And from the bottom up, we need to do what we can do on a community basis to see what can be done to get some common sense and some reliability back in our whole system from the bottom up. I think we have to eliminate political parties. I don't think they're recoverable. I think they've been around too long. Other countries have as many as 30, 40 parties. Why do we have these two that are just entrenched? And they're so entrenched, they won't give up their power. They're going to fight and fight and fight. So we just have to get together as a people and make them illegal by referendum, if you will. And if that doesn't work, we go to the Supreme Court and we demand that these 9 justices rule 9-0 to get rid of the political parties. That will probably never happen, so we the people are going to have to take control back of our country, or we're not going to have a country. It's as simple as that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to get back in control of our country and the way that it's run. And we have to pay attention, and low information people have to start cleaning out the cobwebs that have been implanted in their head by the liberals and the progressives, and start asking yourself basic questions if you want to start there. But I think the quickest way is just look and see how the policies have worked out that the liberals and progressives have been promoting over the years. How did the education of our children work out, where they keep pouring and pouring and pouring more of our hard-earned money at the school education system, where the teachers now have these large classes because other teachers have become administrators. They found out why you have to screw around every day with little Johnny and little Mary when I can be an administrator and sit in an office and administrate and get a better salary than I could ever do fighting with Johnny and Mildred or whatever. And why should I teach class when I can just be an administrator? And so now you have 10 administrators for every one teacher, and as a result, you got 40, 50, 60 pupils in one class, and nobody learns anything. So we have to get control. We have to get common sense back in the way we do things. And the only way we can do that is we, as a community, have to start from that level up. We have to create our own cities and our own towns and everything. We have to get them on track. We have to start there. We have to start someplace. We can't start from the top down, because elected officials that have risen through their various offices, from councilman to blah, 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 on up the ladder till we end up like a Harry Reid and a senator for your life, worth millions of dollars, lived at the Ritz-Carlton in Washington, D.C. like a king, visiting dignitary from Saudi Arabia, I guess is the way he lived. We have to see how we create localized government that can elect people, leaders, that can go on up the ladder on a statewide basis, and then those can be elected to nationwide offices, if you will, but they have to go by a certain amount of time, and when their time's up, they have to go back to where they came from. And we elect someone else to send them off, and we make sure that we have accountability on these people, because we have to have accountability. And this is what's going to work. I'd be giving out our phone number right now, but we've just moved our radio station, and we just got broadcast back going this weekend. And we're having a little difficulty with our phone system right now, because everything in the world, service and even technology and so forth, seems to me in the last several years is taking a kind of rapid step backwards. We've got people now in various organizations that are not competent. You try to call a phone company someday and see how far you get. First of all, you'll be on hold for a long, long time, and it just doesn't work. Nothing works anymore. You can buy 2 particular items, the same item. You can buy 2 of them, I found out. This is my feeling anyways. And out of the 2 items, when you get them delivered, one of them won't work. So 50%, it seems, of what you buy this day and age doesn't work right out of the box. Now, what that is just incompetency at all levels in the chain of production, from the stock boy to the engineer to the architect. Everybody is doing less and less of their job anymore. There's no quality control. There's no checks and balances. There's no checks and balances on our government. Everything is out of whack. You have a president that has an agenda to sell national health care, and the only reason that they want to promote that is because that gets people dependent on the officials that are going to control their health care, so that you have to vote for them, otherwise you lose your health care. So this was the whole purpose, was to get votes, was to make you dependent upon them. So they passed this boondoggle called Obamacare, and they promised, and in the passing of it, this was not a tax. Oh, they couldn't call it a tax, or it never would have passed. So they didn't call it a tax on purpose. They called it something else. They called it health care. Well, it has nothing to do with health or care. What it was passed was mandatory insurance, where they're forcing you to buy insurance. And how do you know that? Because when you don't buy the insurance, you get fined. So what is that? And that's not a tax? Of course it's a tax. So when it ends up getting pushed to the Supreme Court, the illustrious John Roberts, who's supposed to be kind of a conservative, we thought, turning out different, like Sandoval or whatever, and here you got now Roberts calls it a tax. Well, wait a minute. I thought it wasn't a tax. Obama and everybody in the Senate and Congress jamming it down our throats. They said it wasn't a tax. Now you're saying it is a tax. This is the way things get changed around. You're sold a bill of goods continuously, day in and day out. You're sold smoke and mirrors from Washington. All the facts and figures that they produce are all phony. Fake figures, fake math, fake everything. Everything about Washington, D.C. is disingenuous. It's all a lie. And we've come to just kind of like dumb down, and everybody kind of accept, oh, well, that's the way it is. Nothing can be done about it. Well, let me tell you something. Something better be done about it. Where this country's done, we're not going forward. We're not leaving our country better off to our kids than what was left to us. So this is an issue that we need to pay attention to that and say, what can we do to correct this situation? And I think it's easily correctable. Well, maybe not easily, but I think we can put in motion various things that we do and pay attention to that will get us going on the right track. And as long as we're going on the right track, eventually we're going to get to where we're being productive again and we're actually making headway. But we have to start by going on the right. Step we can make is have a complete cleaning of. I think that could be handled the quickest, the best way through Donald Trump, a successful businessman who's created his own empire. Thousands of people work for him. There's not many people that work for the Trump organization at any level, from the bus boys to the people that cut the grass at the golf courses to anybody else. You don't hear anybody coming forth saying anything negative about the Trump-owned properties. You don't hear maids complaining. You don't hear cooks. You don't hear. There's thousands of people that work for those organizations. Where's the feedback? Here's the guy Trump, the names on all the buildings. Everybody knows Trump. Why aren't there people complaining about him if he's not a good businessman or a good leader or a good businessman? He is, and that's why there's millions of people that are supporting him. And we need to pay attention. We need a leader exactly like this man. And guess what? There's nobody else running in his category. So we have to elect this guy and be thankful that we have the opportunity to elect a guy like this, because he doesn't need it. The last thing he needs is to have to go through this struggle of straightening out this country. But one thing that Trump, I think, knows about himself is that he can do it. He can get it done. And that's what's motivating him to do this. Because once he straightens out this country, I think it'll be straight for many, many decades to come, because he's going to show the way. And then all we have to do is make sure that policies and so forth that he's implemented, we're going to see the road, and we better keep our eye on the road. And we'll create a country that will once again be the leader of the world in all respects. We'll have the strongest military, not to go conquer people and take over their world, but to prevent anybody from messing with us. If we have a strong military, no one's going to mess with us. And I think we showed that to Saddam Hussein, who ended up dangling from a rope, and Gaddafi, who ended up with his own people taking him out. And we were sending messages around the world with activities like that. Where's bin Laden today? You go against the people of the world to their best interest, and you're going to be not around anymore. You're going to go see your maker and have those 70-something virgins that you think you're going to get. You're going to get nothing but shark bait. And this is what's going to happen. So we need to get this world back on track. We need to get it straightened out. And we can do that. We can make sure that the people that we elect to government offices, running the show, doing the people's work. You know, government is not some magical kingdom for the workers that work for the government, the bureaucrats. It's not their government for their benefit. No, the government is for the benefit of the people that elect the supposed leaders of government positions that end up hiring these bureaucrats and stuff. We have to have accountability to the people that work for this government to make sure, foremost, number one issue, that they're actually doing things for the benefit of the people. And if you're a bureaucrat and your job is to pass legislation, regulations rather, and regulate, so your bonus at the end of the year is dependent upon how many new regulations you've passed, you need to go. We need to stop that mindset. We need to have a policy whereby for any new regulation that has merit and passes the muster that it is a necessary regulation for whatever purpose it may be, that you have to eliminate 2 regulations to get one new one passed. So what do you want to get rid of if you want a new regulation? And I think that should be a policy, at least to start with. And maybe we need to eliminate 3 or 4, not just 2, because there's thousands and thousands of regulations. I hear that the Federal Register now is up to 800,000 pages. Are you serious? I mean, this is ridiculous. We've gotten to the point, and think about it. You're a bureaucrat. You get hired for a government job, and you're in charge of making regulations. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to make regulations because you think that's your job. So you regulate. On a slow day, you might only pass 2 or 3 new regulations. But this is ridiculous. We have to stop this mindset. Regulations are a cancer. They're struggling our businesses. They're struggling our world. We need to stop this crap. You pass a regulation like the EPA stuff and the Clean Water Act and all this stuff. Well, maybe there were good intentions to start with, but what does it morph into? It morphs into where if you have a little puddle on your farm and you try to drain the puddle or get rid of the water or what have you, now you've done some environmental thing on your land where you're subject to a fine of $30,000 a day until you put the puddle back. I mean, this is ridiculous. We have to get the property rights back for the people that own their land. It's your land. You should be able to do what you want with it within certain limits. I mean, there have to be community provisions that set the standards, if you will. But when you have ridiculous, stupid, dumbass government regulators with a badge on their lapel thinking that they're King Kong. I had an experience in the oil business one time where we had this new kid out of college. I think he was 22 years old, and he got a job with OSHA. Well, he started going around to my oil leases in the area, and he would notice some oil on the ground by tank batteries that were holding crude oil. Well, on inspection, this new college kid determined that these oil leaks, the stuff on the ground, this black stuff, was oil. Oh my God, we have an oil spill. So that's $10,000 a day fine and so forth. And he tried to pass this paperwork off on my organization that I was going to be subject to a $10,000 fine a day until I cleaned up this oil spill that occurred on one of my oil leases. Well, on inspection, my guys go by this oil lease and there's no oil spill. What are you talking about? And then come to find out, oh, well, there's some of our trucks have a crankcase that leaks oil, and there's a couple of oil drops on the ground over here by the tank battery. Is that what the oil spill is? Some crankcase oil from a truck? And come to find out, yep, that's exactly what this oil spill was. And here we got this 22-year-old kid threatening our viable business that created a service. People would buy our oil. We were producing something, and he wanted to put us out of business with these $10,000 a day fines. This guy was a moron, a friggin' moron, and we had to run him literally out of town. I got the congressman, the senator, all these people that come pouring into my office around election time with their hand out looking for this and that so they can get elected. Well, I got them in my office, and I pointed a picture of this guy on the wall that I had hung up there, wanted dead or alive. And went, whoa, what's that? I said, this guy works for OSHA. He's a college kid, just graduated, and he thinks he's going to fine me $10,000 a day for a crankcase oil drop on an oil lease. And, some of my guys are going to kill him and get the reward. Well, boy, that guy was never seen again. These people in power supposedly got rid of him in a heartbeat. But this is just an unorthodox way to do things, but sometimes that's what it takes. You can't work within the system because this system's broken. And I'll close today with just a quick story. It's been a long story, but it's been going on in this state, Nevada, here in Las Vegas, for some time now. It's 7 years this has been going on, where my family had a trust concerning some property in New Hampshire. This was valuable property, but all it was a cottage sitting on some land that happened to be on Lake Winnipesaukee. So it was valuable to that extent because of where it was sitting. The home was absolutely nothing to speak of. Abe Lincoln probably used something like this back in his days. It was just a log cabin is exactly what it was. And so it wasn't a mansion, but it was worth a lot of money. So my desire for that particular piece of property, because I have memories there, that's where I grew up, I wanted to keep that particular property forever. Those properties at that particular location are very hard to come by. And you pay a lot in taxes for that. For that log home, you pay more than the home's worth every year in taxes. You could have rented a home way, way nicer than that log cabin for 1/100th of the money for what you paid in taxes. But anyways, we wanted to keep it, so we were. And then my parents died, both of them. My mother was the last to go, and she left the property in a will to me and my sister. Well, my sister, being the inebriate that she is, decides, well, she needs money, so she always depended upon mommy. If she needed a new washing machine or a new carpet or whatever, a new car, she had to go to mommy to get the money because she never had a quarter to her name, so she was just dependent upon mommy. And then when mommy was no longer around, she had to steal the money. So she brought some money from New Hampshire, cleaned out my mother's bank accounts that were held in the trust, so half of the money was my money, and brought it all to Nevada and put it in her bank account. And then proceeded to use it as her piggy bank to get whatever she wanted to get personally, and she was going through the money at a nice rapid clip. Right after my mother died, she went to Walmart, and one transaction over one item, because there were others in the same day, but one item she spent $4,500 for. Now, what was that, a big screen TV or something? Who the hell knows? But it was within a month of my mother dying. So she was going through the money lickety-split. She thought she was rich now. The hell with her brother, me. She was just going to use all the money for herself. Well, I asked for an accounting. I wanted to see where the money was going. She refused to give me any. I kept asking and doing everything I could do. But with banking laws and this and that, because my sister had talked my sick mother, who had Alzheimer's the last 4 years of her life and dementia. She didn't know what 2 and 2 was at the end of her life, and somehow my sister was passing off these new documents shortly before she died as an amendment to her trust documents, giving Wanda, my sister, exclusive control, sole trustee of the trust, which my mother never wished for that ever. She knew better than that because she was the one always giving my sister money for everything, and she knew that she was completely unreliable for money. But anyways, that's what happened. So I had to file a suit in Nevada because that's where she took the money to have access to find out what was going on, knowing full well that when I got access to the information, it would show that she was indeed misappropriating funds from the trust, which is supposedly half of my money that she's holding for me. Well, she's using it so fast, there was no time for me to get any. Anyways, I prevailed on that lawsuit. I won. I got access to the bank documents, and lo and behold, it showed that she was doing exactly of what I was accusing her of. She was misappropriating money. So this was a simple deal done in what should have been a simple case over misappropriation. It was filed as a tort in district court because it wasn't a trust case. It had absolutely nothing to do with the trust other than my sister had made herself somehow sole trustee where it was supposed to be co-trustee with me. As a result, I didn't have access to this information. Well, I needed to get access to the information. As it turns out, I guess for now it looks like I made a huge mistake because I went to a court in Nevada, which in my opinion now are the most corrupt courts I have ever run into in my life. Over this case, I've spent the last 6 years looking and reading cases that I can find that have facts that are based on some sort of semblance to mine, this case. And I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases. I have never, ever seen a case with the result that this one has had so far. I was unlucky enough to get the luck of the drawer, the misluck of the drawer, and it was filed in '09. And in '09, the hotel industry was collapsing. No new hotels were going up, and I got assigned a judge who was in charge of construction defect cases, primarily for these hotels. When you build a big billion-dollar hotel, at the end of the day, contractors are always arguing and fighting with the owners over how they're going to get their 10% holdback. And on a billion-dollar hotel, that could be as much as $100 million. At the end of the day, it's not been paid. And then the owner comes up and says, well, this window's not thick enough, this brick's not the right color, everything is wrong, trying to hold back on that $100 million. And they start fighting over it, and they end up going to court. Well, the judge I got assigned in this simple case was this maniac in charge of complicated litigation, they would call it, because you end up with every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the courtroom, all with their own lawyers, and he was used to being involved in zoos. And he turned my case, a simple case of misappropriation and access to bank documents, he turned into an absolute friggin' zoo. And as a result, he couldn't make anything hiding a hair out of the facts of the case. He misconstrued everything. He had no history, either as a lawyer or as a judge, on handling anything like this case that concerned a trust and property outside of the state. He had no clue what he was doing. He never handled a case that had any property outside of Nevada, I'm sure, because he wouldn't have been handling it. It was a construction cases that what he handled. Well, the construction had to be in Nevada, or he wouldn't have been assigned the case. Well, anyways, he makes these rulings that primarily boil down to the only ruling that became his agenda at the end of the day was he removed my sister as trustee because that was automatic. I mean, Christ almighty, she's stealing money left and right with both hands as fast as she can. So that was a no-brainer. But then his agenda became to pay my sister's lawyer because my sister had no money to pay him with. So how was the lawyer going to get paid? Well, Judge, he wasn't going to get paid. He's the idiot that took the case from a client that couldn't pay him. He took it on the com because of the $1 million a home in New Hampshire. So now this judge thinks, well, I'll just sell the home in New Hampshire and we'll get the money from that, and then I can pay this lawyer. Well, the lawyer lost the case. He doesn't deserve to be paid. And I guess he took it on a contingency because my sister never paid him nothing. So you've got a lawyer that's not qualified to get paid for anything because he took a client he never should have taken. And he lost the case because she was a thief. So this is not difficult. This is pretty, basic 101. Well, anyways, long story short, this judge makes all these rulings. I go, nope, that can't stand. So New Hampshire law, I had been named co-trustee of this trust originally. So when this judge removed my sister for thievery, I became the trustee automatically because I'm named in the trust documents in New Hampshire as trustee. So I became trustee. So I went back to New Hampshire, and this house that this judge had his eyes on to sell outside of his jurisdiction to pay the lawyer before him in his court, I sold the house, and then to protect the money, I got a cashier's check. So now my banker had told me that no one can do anything with that money, but you have possession of the check. It's a negotiable instrument and it has cash equivalency, so that's it. No, it's not subject to any court orders. So okay, so I get the cashier's check. And now this judge goes crazy. This lawyer back here, my sister's lawyer that can't get paid, now goes insane. How's he going to get paid? So they start having these emergency hearings and this and that. The judge orders me to turn over the money to him so he can give it to everybody. I go, no, that's not going to happen. So I deny him that, and then he tries to threaten me with contempt of court. He's going to throw me in jail and this and that, and then I can get out of jail when I give him the money. And, all this stuff going on, all illegal, by the way. And because the judge has no jurisdiction outside the borders of Nevada. He doesn't have it. And I knew that. I mean, I can read the law. This is a New Hampshire property, and it's not in Nevada. And now the money's a cashier's check, and it's not in Nevada either. And it's made out to a New Hampshire trust, so you have no jurisdiction. The trust was never really before the court. It was a matter of a trustee who was stealing money from the trust. So the terms of the trust were never an issue. So anyways, long story short, this judge refuses to make a final ruling that I could appeal, and you can't appeal anything till a final ruling's made, and he's refusing to do it, and now they're scheming here in Nevada how to get this money. They found out that I hadn't cashed a check because I was holding on the check until this judge files his final order that I could appeal. So I'm not going to do anything with the check. I was holding it for safety to protect the trust. So I'm holding on to the check. This judge ends up trying all kinds of tricks. They tried a temporary restraining order telling the bank not to pay the check and this and that. Well, all that stuff's against the law too, so none of it would work. Finally, I guess they determined from the banker that the only way that they can stop payment on a cashier's check is if the judge says that the check's lost. Well, the check's not lost. I have the check. I've always had the check. So, but this Judge Earl brings it upon himself. Well, that's no problem. I'll just sign an order saying that the check's lost, and that's what he does. So he does a fraudulent deal, attests to the fact that a check's lost, it's not lost. Now the bank, having gotten an order from a judge saying the check's lost, what's the bank going to do? The bank, well, anyone can say the check's lost if they had the check. The judge couldn't even do this because he never had the check. And in this order he signed, it says return the money to Nevada. Well, the money was never in Nevada. So how do you return money that was never there? Anyways, there's a lot of things wrong with this. I won't bore you with all the details right now, but the bottom line of what this thing has turned into now is the appellate court, a new court, has only been around for 1 year in this state, has ruled in on this, and they have completely misconstrued the constitutional law of the United States. They are trying to protect Judge Earl because Judge Earl created a Class A felony, and the man needs to go to jail. Being a judge does not protect you when you do a Class A felony under the color of office, wearing a black robe. When you break the law, you're going to jail too. and this judge broke the law, and he needs to go to jail. And now the Supreme Court has weighed in, trying to protect him from that happening. And in that process of doing that, they've broken the law and violated the Constitution of the United States. So this illustrious state of Nevada is now a bigger criminal, as this judge was, and this is what we're up against here in Nevada. We have a judiciary that is criminal. And I will take this up with you tomorrow, same time, same station. Although tomorrow I'll have the pleasure of someone joining me on the show, Ed Williams, who is the chairman of the Clark County Republican Committee. And he was interested in promoting the caucus that we're going to have here in Nevada shortly. And he wants to get people registered to vote so you can participate in getting the next president of the United States elected. Of course, he's a Republican, so he wants a Republican elected. I want Trump elected. I don't think he's opposed to that as long as it's a Republican. And Trump right now is a Republican, so we're on the same planet. So he's coming in to do the show tomorrow with me, and I'll be interested to get all the details out from that interview about where the caucus is, what time, how do you do it, what it is about, and we'll go over that tomorrow. So tune in Tuesday, tomorrow, we'll hear all about that. And then Wednesday, I might take back up where I left off today about the unconstitutional handling of the Nevada appellate court and the reason that they need to be disbanded because they're not going to work. It's a completely invalid court in the state of Nevada, and it's only making things worse, not better. So see you tomorrow. Tune in 2 o'clock. The Herd. Thank you. Out.